Welcome to the 12 Hike Podcast, where we talk about all the ways you can get outdoors. I'm Zach Jenkins. Thanks for listening. I'm convinced of something. I think the graduating class of 2004 in Northwest High School is probably the most interesting high school class ever. And today's conversation pretty much sealed the deal for that. I sat down and talked to Brian. He's a former classmate. We graduated high school together. And after looking at his Facebook page, I realized he used falcons to hunt. So naturally, again, my curiosity was piqued and I had to talk to him. It's a lot more in-depth than I thought, and it sounds like a hell of a lot of fun.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Well, I haven't talked to you since high school.
Yeah, it's been a while.
What have you been into? Did you go to the military?
Yeah, straight out of high school, went in the Army and got shipped off to Iraq like 2 weeks after finishing AIT and basic training. And so after touring Iraq, I was like, well, I might as well just go, full-time active duty. And ended up in Texas for quite a few years at Fort Hood, and finally ended up getting medically retired, and went to West Virginia for a little bit, a couple different parts of Ohio. And
Did you end up back home, back in Sauter County?
I'm close. I'm in a little town called Bainbridge, which is up in Ross County. So, I'm like 45 minutes from McDermott and down around home. So
let's face it, that's still, that's about almost as Sauter County as it gets.
Oh yeah.
What made you decide to go in the Army?
Well, originally it was just going to be, a way to help pay for college and whatever. So I just did the National Guard thing. That was my plan, at least, do the National Guard and I could pay for college that way. And like I said, after I just immediately got sent over for a tour in Iraq, I was just like, oh, well, I might as well just, make a job of this if I'm going to keep getting sent over here. So I was going to give it the 20 years, that was the goal, but they had different ideas and decided I wasn't up to par anymore. So
well, I'm glad that you actually were able to make it back to Bainbridge. I know during that time that was probably a pretty scary place.
Yeah, it was. Well, at that time a little younger and not as aware of the dangers and whatnot you're in, so I was doing route clearance. I was digging bombs up out of the roads over there and stuff. And
oh shit,
yeah,
no way.
Looking back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, that could have went wrong.
Wow, you could have met Jesus real quick.
Yeah, so but made it through all that fine, and still worked out. Still used it to pay for college after it was all said and done. Just was a little longer route than initially had planned.
Jeez. Well, now here you are. I've been watching a lot of your little scope cam videos of your deer hunts. Were you always a hunter? I didn't think you were in high school.
In high school it wouldn't have seemed like it because, at that time I was doing a lot of, whatever, the skating and BMX and, that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, from long as I can remember, really, I had some uncles that took me fishing and hunting all the time. Mm-hmm. They introduced me to it, and it started out as I started squirrel hunting, probably when I was like 10 or so. Just going out there and doing it myself, and then got into deer hunting, and eventually did a little bit of coyote hunting for a while. Brandon Smith got me into that actually for a little bit years ago.
Yeah, that guy's a savage.
Yeah, and so yeah, no, it's been something I've always done, just not not something I made a big part of my life until here recently.
Yeah, and what's made the difference of making it a little bit bigger part of your life here recently?
I think a big part of just the time and money to be able to really just kind of dive into it the way I always would have liked, and my kids too. I remembered how big of a thing it was for me when my uncles taught me all this, and my first time, and just all those emotions and excitement you get the very first time you get something in your sights and all that, get something down, and wanted to share that with my kids, and in the process of trying to teach them and introduce them, it kind of bit me again real hard.
I know I was watching the video of, what was it, you and your son, were you target shooting a little bit? And that kid looks like he's gonna be a bona fide killer.
Yeah, that was my youngest. He that was his first time getting to shoot anything. So
I know for me, I've never been a big deer hunter until I moved out here, and I spent all of August chasing mule deer in the mountains, and I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, it's a little different kind of hunting out there.
Oh man, I didn't realize it was going to be that hard, and just finding them. Back in Ohio, Jesus, it seems like they're everywhere. But out here, there's just thousands and thousands of, public land acres that you got to kind of wade through. I just, I bought a bow. I was like, I'll practice a little bit. It'll be all right. Doesn't work that way. There's a lot more involved in it than what I had anticipated.
Right. Yeah. That's part of it, though. It's part of the fun. So,
I guess.
But it's one of those things where you're like, oh man, it's hard out here, but at the same time, somebody that's never hunted out there, it's like, man, I wish I could go out there and hunt, So.
Well, and I wasn't disappointed after this season. I saw more deer this year than I ever have, and I've been, in proximity to them at the right times. Just always a bad beat. The wind was blowing the wrong way, or just luck didn't work out in my favor, and it really kind of reinvigorated me. Next year, I'm not going to go bow hunting. I'm going to have a rifle. If I would have had a rifle, it would have been over 5 times this year. I could have shot
right.
anything. But I think next year, like I tried to spread myself kind of thin. I wanted to do like the big game trifecta. I wanted to get a mule deer, an elk, and an antelope. That's not realistic for me anyway. So I think next year I'm going to focus on rifle mule deer. I'm going to get one under my belt, and then, start to culture that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a little bit different style of hunting out there. I'm sure it's a bit more stalking style of hunting. It probably pays off a lot better there, compared to here in Ohio. If you've got a good place to sit, you can just sit and wait, and you usually have some luck. But at least the part of I assume you got some pretty open, vast areas.
Yeah, have you been out this way ever?
I've drove through. I drove a truck there for a while, and so I've been out through, but never really got to hang around. And I know different parts of the state. It varies a good bit, the landscape.
Yeah, that's what really took me by surprise. You get into Kansas and you think, well, this shithole's just nothing but flat land. I can't wait to get to Colorado because there's going to be some landscape and mountains. And you get into eastern Colorado and you're like, well, crap, it's just as flat here as it was in Kansas. But where we live, it's the Front Range. I can see the mountains out my back door, and it is. It's a very dynamic environment.
Oh, that's awesome. Getting to use high-powered rifles, that'll be nice. That'll help a lot. I wish we could do that here. We got straight wall cartridges now, so that's a little better.
That's something. I think it's a step in the right direction. But here's the thing that gets me. You can hunt coyote with a high-powered rifle.
Yep.
Why can't you go ahead and deer hunt with a high-powered rifle?
Right, right. And the at least the prevailing reason is that oh well, the straight wall cartridges, they only got about 250 yards before they're gonna, you don't have to worry about them flying forever and stuff. Well, like you said, we can use them for coyotes, so they're obviously not that worried about rifle rounds being able to travel far.
Maybe it's just the sheer number of people, because how many people honestly coyote hunt versus...
That is true. Yeah, definitely drastic difference in the number of people that participate in those two sports. So that is a good point.
And I think that was the other thing that always scared me about deer hunting in Ohio. Just my perception of it is you've got a lot of people that for 1 week out of a year, they turn into a hunter, and they don't really follow safety guidelines like I'd like. And it gets kind of scary.
I agree. I am not one to... I'm not big on hunting public land if I can help it. For that reason, even that's even like taking the bird hunting. I really end up kind of iffy on trying my luck with public land because I don't trust somebody to not see my bird and take a shot at it, even though they shouldn't, and it's illegal.
Let's talk about that. Okay, first of all, do you know a little bit of the history of falconing, where it started, and all that good jazz?
General. We don't really have a set date and hey, this is when it started.
Mm-hmm.
But it's generally believed about 4,000 years that we know of as far as just recorded information, and that comes from Asia mainly. So it seems to have started in the Asian area of the world and spread from there. Likely traders and what have you seen it and was like, oh, this is cool, and picked it up and took it back to their respective areas of the world. It was real big in Europe through the Middle Ages especially, but it's something that has been done in various parts of the world for a long time in slightly different ways.
What was the original reason? Was it always a hunting thing for small game?
It's believed that it was a hunting thing, especially in Asia. There's a group of people that use, I forget the name of the birds. It's not a bird of prey, but they still use these birds to catch fish. They have these long poles and they have these birds out on them, and they go out on boats and they use these birds to catch fish. So it's believed that it started as a hunting sport, as a way to catch game, and when it made its way to Europe, especially during the Middle Ages, it took on a nobility role essentially, where you had it was considered a wealthy person's sport and activity, to the point where certain species of birds were could only be kept and flown by your lords and what have you, and your lower ranking people in the community, they may only be allowed a what was considered a lower end bird, if you will. So and it's changed over the years. In the Middle East right now, it's very much a sport. There's not much of a hunting aspect left to it at all. They race them, and it's all about breeding and stuff. So, they've kind of lost that hunting aspect of the sport. But here in the U.S., it's very much what it's all about. It is a hunting sport, and not to say that there isn't some people that we call pet keepers and what have you. But to do it, you have to have a hunting license, and you are supposed to be hunting the bird.
It's so strange. I seen that you got into this thing, and I thought, my first thought was, well, how the heck do you even catch one, or do you buy them, or you caught yours, didn't you?
Yes. Here in the U.S., you when you're an apprentice, when you first get started, now
Hold on.
it can.
There's a
Oh,
hierarchy. Like you start off as an apprentice and then work your way up the ladder.
yep. Yes, sir. It's a 2-year apprenticeship. You have to find a general or a master ranked falconer, and they have to be willing to take you on for 2 years for your apprenticeship. From that point, after your 2 years, you can move up to a general class falconer, and then after 5 more years, you can upgrade to a master falconer rank.
Wow. Okay. All right. So yeah, you start off as an apprentice, and we were talking about catching your bird. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, that's all right. Yeah. So in the U.S., and it varies a little bit from state to state. Some states do allow things to be a little different, but in general, a lot of places, the apprentice has to trap their first bird. And for example, here in Ohio, your choices are a red-tailed hawk or an American kestrel. Those are the 2 birds we're allowed to trap. Once you move beyond apprentice, then you can get into having other species and buying captive bred and all that.
Is there an advantage to having a wild caught bird versus a captive caught bird?
So one of the, and I guess this is an advantage more for the bird than it is for the falconer.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, with the red-tailed hawk, their survivability rate in their first year of life is pretty low. Something around like 80% don't make it through their first year. So with us trapping, if we because we have to trap what's called a passage bird. It's a bird that's in its first year of life. So my bird that I have right now hatched out earlier this year in the spring, and so that allows us to take this bird, help train it to hunt, keep it, and it'll make it to a breeding age, at which point we can let it go and it can go back into the wild and help, with the breeding population. For the falconer, the benefits, a wild caught bird, a passage bird, one, it likely already has some hunting experience under its belt on its own. So it's at least got some foundation there. And then there's other little things. They tend to not be as vocal. They won't make as much noise, and they won't be. Often they're not as aggressive, because there are some species. So red-tailed hawk, for example. If you catch a wild passage bird, once you have them manned or trained down, they're pretty reasonable. But if you bought a captive bred one and it imprints, it sees you as one of its own, essentially. They can be a little more aggressive with you because they just think of you as another hawk, essentially, and they'll be a lot more vocal about everything. So some people aren't as fond about all of that.
I wouldn't think about a bird as being that attachable, I guess I would say. To me, they wouldn't be capable of forming bonds like that. But is that not the case?
That happens with the imprints, which is, when it's either a baby chick that's pulled from the nest, or you've bought it, from a breeder, and if you have them from that young of an age, they will imprint on you, and like I said, they end up viewing you as one of them, essentially, and they'll treat you as such. And sometimes that's where the aggressiveness and whatnot can come from, because they're just treating you like they would a sibling or another hawk.
Huh. In the wild, how long do hawks stay as like a family, or do they split up pretty quickly?
It varies some between species. Um, Most pairs, once they're paired with a mate, that's who they stick with until something happens, and maybe one of them dies or what have you. But
Hmm.
once paired up, they that's generally who they're with.
And what about their offspring? Do they stick around for like that first year until they're out of that juvenile stage and then go off and do their
Uh,
own thing?
Again, I mean, it varies from species. So, for example, like bald eagles, people are real familiar with those. Um, they have a longer period to reach maturity, and their young will tend to hang around, sometimes for years in the same area that their parents um, nest at every year. Uh, Other species, like the red-tailed hawk that I have, it's not as long. They'll um, they'll hang around for some of them will hang around for a good chunk of that first year.
Hmm.
Um, Others, the parents may take off, and the juvenile will hang around in that area they were born in for a while, before they take off. But generally, it's nowhere near as long as say like a bald eagle, and that's just uh, due to their rate of maturity, how quickly they reach breeding age and all that. And like I said, it varies from species to species.
Okay. Whenever you trapped your hawk, this is the second hawk you've trapped recently. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, we trapped a lot this year, but this is the second one that I've kept.
Okay. The first one died, didn't it?
Yes, it uh, had it's called aspergillosis. I'm not saying that right at all. We call it Asper for short.
Okay.
It is a respiratory infection, that they sometimes can get, and it's one of those things that there's very little you can do. It has like a 95% mortality rate.
Hmm.
So by the time uh, notice the symptoms, there wasn't really a whole lot could do about it. Um, but it's part of the sport. It's just one of those things you got to deal with. That kind of stuff happens. The same way with injuries and stuff during the hunting season. I got a buddy, his hawk lost a toe last year. So
Oh, geez. So what's the trap look like to catch one of these things, and what's the process in trapping one?
we generally use what's called a Balshotry trap, or a BC trap, and it's essentially a small wire cage that you can place bait into. A mouse, gerbil, what have you, whatever you want to use.
Hmm.
And this cage is covered with nooses, usually made out of like monofilament fishing line, or like a thin steel wire leader, something like that. And it's a slip noose, and it's just covered in them. And we drive around, look for them sitting on a pole or a power line or in a tree, and toss the trap out the window underneath them, and just wait for them to come down. And when they come down to try and grab the mouse or whatever you have in the cage, hopefully their feet end up getting caught in one of those nooses that's covered in the trap, and then we just roll up real fast and toss a towel over top of them so they calm down and can't see, and get them loose and go from there.
Wow. So it's kind of like catching a Pokemon a little bit.
Yeah, it's fun. Trapping is just as fun as actually taking the birds hunting, in my opinion. It's a lot of fun.
Do you have to have some kind of license or something to go out and trap them, or could I go out and trap one if I wanted to?
No, you have to have you have to be a licensed falconer, so that means you have to have a sponsor and have taken your exam and had your inspections and all that. And then if then you can apply to get your raptor capture permit, which will actually allow you to go capture one.
Huh. All right. Well, there's more regulations to that than I thought.
There, there's a lot of regulations to this sport.
Okay, after you trap them, calm them down. Uh, Once you get them in your possession, when do you start training them, and what's the first thing you do when you get them back to your house?
In a way, the training starts immediately. Pretty much from the moment you get them off the trap, you place a hood on their head, which uh, prevents them from being able to see anything, darkens their vision, and that puts them in a very calm state. When they can't see anything, they generally won't, try to fly, try to, get away, do anything like that. Um, so from that moment, you're holding the bird, you're talking to it, you're getting used to the sound of your voice, um, and, and as far as once you get home, um, everybody has their own methods, and in falconry, you'll often get a different opinion on everything, and it's one of those things. Everybody has their right way of doing it, but for me, the first thing I get home is I just put it on its perch, leave the hood on it, in a dark, quiet room, um, and I'll leave it that way for that first night. Um, the next day, I'll get it. I'll get it up on the glove, um, and then I'll just sit there with it on the glove with the hood still on, just talking to it, letting it get used to the voice. And then eventually you slide the hood off, and at that point, most of them will probably try to fly away, but you have them attached to a leash to the glove, and you just get them back up on the glove, and you just kind of keep repeating that, and it's just a slow process of getting them used to more and more things, getting them to trust you more and more.
Do you use a reward system like you would a dog? Like every time they get back on your glove, do you give them a treat?
Uh, so the reward system with them is food. Everything about them is food driven. Their entire lives revolves around that. Um, so that is what we use, but you have to be very careful about when you use it, how you use it, because they're very intelligent, and they will kind of train you if you don't watch. If they realize, hey, if I don't move, for a while, he he ends up giving me something anyways, and they'll do that. They'll take advantage of that. So you got to be careful about how and when you reward them, and be pretty firm about it. Um, so yeah, initially, the biggest breakthrough at first is getting them to take a piece of food from you, because at first they generally won't want to do it. Um, Once you get them to take a piece of food from you, then you try to get them to take it a little bit lower and a little bit lower, and that has them. They have to bend their head over, and in the wild, an animal doesn't want to expose its neck to something. That's a death sentence usually.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get that bird to bend its head all the way down to get that piece of food, that's a big trust point right there. That's a big milestone. Um, and from that point, we just keep using the food to uh, get the actions we want. It goes from them just eating the food off the glove, taking it from us, to uh, having to do a short little jump off of a perch to the glove, to flying across the room. To for them to get their reward, we keep asking more and more of them. We keep extending what it is we want them to do.
And they can understand that.
Yeah, they pick it up super fast. I've seen guys, have their bird flying across the yard 5 days after they took it off the trap. Generally, it seems to be kind of a 2 to 3 week thing from off the trap to ready to hunt. So it's a process that generally can go pretty quick.
How much time a day do you usually put in with your bird?
During the whole manning and training, and manning is our term for getting the bird used to us handling them and being with them. During that whole phase, I kept it at only an hour a day, pretty much, because it's one of those things you don't, if you drag it out too long, you can run into some issues that you didn't want. But you gotta, you have to do enough time to get in the goal, to try to make some progress for that day. And once you get that, generally I would end it on a good note and allow the bird to kind of take in what all went on during that session until the next day.
So how long between you getting the bird, the training and the manning, when do you start hunting that bird?
Like I said, I mean, it kind of varies with each person and each bird. Some birds just, train a lot faster and better than others. For me, I think it was right at 3 weeks when she was ready to hunt. And she could have maybe been pushed a little sooner than that. But I had already, trapped one bird and had the health issues with it. So I didn't want to rush things and end up losing this bird.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of took it a little slower and made sure that she was rock solid before, was ready to free fly her and attempt hunting.
Did you name your bird? I assume you did, but.
Yeah, her name is Tater, which is short for potato soup, because I trapped her in a Panera Bread parking lot in Columbus.
How many weird-ass looks did you get trapping a bird in a Panera Bread in Columbus?
I'm sure there was probably plenty. I was too focused on what was going on to pay attention to onlookers. But yeah, that's where I trapped her. So I picked something off the Panera Bread menu to name her after.
That's great. Do falconers prefer females over males, or does it really matter?
Generally, most will prefer females because females are larger. So they're larger and they have bigger feet, so they're should be more capable of taking bigger prey, have a little easier time with rabbits and stuff. Like some guys, they like the male. They think they're a little more agile and speedy, and so maybe they can get after squirrels and stuff a little more efficiently. So it's everybody's got their way they go, but in general, people go after a big female if they can.
And as far as I guess I got two questions: the efficiency of using a falcon to hunt, and the types of prey that you train them to hunt. I assume it's all small game, right?
Yeah, and it's it's one of those things. It's going to vary depending on where you live. So, a red-tailed hawk here is great for cottontail rabbits and squirrel, and they can take other stuff. My buddy has took a goose a few weeks back.
Is that a legal method to take for goose?
As long as you got your stamps and stuff, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But so somebody that lives out west, in Texas, where have you, and they got the bigger jackrabbits, they may choose, they may fly a different species, or if they're somewhere where they're flying a lot of upland game, pheasants and things like that, they're going to, pick a falcon of some sort instead. So you got to pick your bird based on what quarry you have available where you live.
It amazes me that you can train a bird to go out, find a rabbit. Do they bring it back to you?
No, they won't bring it back to you.
Okay.
So that is one of the most common questions we get. Actually, I had a guy ask me that when I took my bird hunting yesterday, I think it was. But we want them to catch it and then stay on the ground with it, so we can get to them and secure them and the prey item. because if it's a small enough prey item, if they're capable and they fly up into a tree with it,
Oh.
well, they're going to sit up there in that tree and eat until they're gorged, and then they're not coming down out of that tree. So we like for them to bring the prey item down to the ground and remain there until we can get in there and get them secured and traded off whatever they caught.
How common is it that once they get that prey animal that they ravage it?
It kind of varies on the individual. Some birds will just start, tearing in right away, and some won't. Some will kind of sit there and just hold it and be looking around and be all mantled over it, worried about something coming to take it from them. So it kind of depends. It's an individual thing on the birds.
You've been a gun hunter before for squirrel and rabbit. Is using a falcon more efficient than guns? I assume not. But is it more fun than using a gun?
It is definitely not more efficient. My sponsor, I think he caught about 50 head of game with his bird last season, which is pretty good.
That's impressive.
It's not a bad number. Once you have a bird it hunts good, it's well seasoned, and you have good spots for it. And it's a good thing about hunting with a hawk. A lot of times, we can hunt in places a gun hunter's not allowed to hunt or not welcome to hunt. So that kind of helps for getting some really good spots sometimes. But they miss a lot. So it's far more efficient to be a gun hunter, but in my opinion, it's way more fun hunting with the bird. It's one of those things you almost kind of have to experience yourself in person to really kind of understand what it's all about and how much fun it is.
I've only had one experience like up close with a hawk taking a prey animal. I worked in an old building in Portsmouth, and it was just a big long warehouse. And this hawk came flying through our warehouse, and we had pigeons real bad. And it snatched one of the pigeons out of the rafters, and it looked like it exploded the pigeon. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And looking at that and then thinking about what you guys do, it's got to be just amazing to watch them in action.
Oh, it is, and that's a big part of why I like squirrel hunting with the hawks. A lot of falconers, especially more traditional and older falconers, been around for a while, kind of look down on the squirrel hunting. It's relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going after rabbit, you kick it up, and usually half the time you don't even notice you kicked it up, and you just see the bird go dive bombing in, and it crashes into the weeds somewhere. You don't really get to see much. Same way with the falcons. If they're going after ducks or pheasant or whatever, they're just soaring 1,000 feet above your head, and then they come zipping down and smash something, and that's it. With the squirrels, we're a lot more involved. We're hitting the trees with sticks. If we see them, we'll shoot marbles with a slingshot to make the squirrel move. Because a lot of times squirrels, if they can, they'll just freeze. They'll find a spot in the tree and they'll just freeze there.
Sure.
So we'll use slingshots to get them moving. That way the bird notices them and goes after them. And a lot of times, the bird will miss its first attempt. The squirrel will jump off a branch or run around, and the bird just keeps going after him. So for me, the squirrel hunting is way more fun because you're right there in the middle of it. You're seeing all of it and taking part of it a lot more so than other forms of hunting and falconry.
Will the bird get keyed in on one animal and just not stop until it gets it, or does it kind of hit a point where it's like, okay, I got to give up on this one. Let's go to the next one?
It definitely will try to get, once it goes after one, it will make every attempt it can. I mean, even to the point they'll run on the ground. They'll try to chase them on foot
Oh
if they can,
God.
which is pretty comical usually. Uh, but they'll make every attempt they can. Um, Usually they'll only give up once they've lost full sight of it, and even then, if they know it went up a specific tree or something, a lot of birds they'll jump back up and they'll ladder up and they'll be looking for it to see if they still can find it.
Hmm.
But they do reach a point where if they're not seeing something, if you don't have something moving, they'll start looking around and see if they can find something on their own.
How do you call them back to you whenever you're done hunting?
So we like it, and it depends on the situation. If you're planning on doing more hunting that day, or if you're done for the day, or what have you. But our first method is just a whistle and a couple of what we call tidbits, which are just small pieces of food for them. And we'll just lay them on the glove and whistle them, and they'll fly down to the glove to eat those, because that's a big part of what they did during their training process was flying repetitively to that glove, on the whistle for food. So that's the first way to get them down. Now, when you're out hunting, they don't always want to come down for that. Especially if they haven't got nothing and they're still in that hunting mode, they won't want to just come down for a couple little tidbits on a glove. So we have what's called the lure, and usually attached to the lure is something they really, really like. So I use day-old chicks, little baby chickens.
Uh-huh.
And that's attached to this lure, and they're wed to that lure during the training process, which means that just if they see it, they're coming for that thing every time. It's kind of our fail-safe backup plan if you need to get your bird back, because they know that when they see that or they get that real long whistle, that they're not just getting a couple little pieces of food, they're getting to
Chow down.
because we swing it on a string and stuff, so they actually get to attack it and grab it, and it's so it's more engaging and fulfilling for them, so they really like it.
I'm not going to lie, that part sounds a little bit morbid. Swinging a dead baby chick around into the air.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's attached to a big leather thing, but yeah, it's there is some, it's not something for the squeamish, and we try to caution people with that, because there are some people that they don't really care about hunting, or they don't want to do it as a hunting sport. They just, oh man, can I have a pet hawk or something? That'd be really cool. So we do try to caution people about that when they're inquiring about the sport. That's one of the first. Do you hunt? Have you? Are you going to be okay? Because sometimes they catch something and they don't kill it right away, and you got to get in there and you have to dispatch it, so it doesn't cause any harm to your bird, and two, it doesn't suffer any longer than it has to.
It doesn't seem to me, me personally, I don't think I'd want a bird of prey as just kind of like this novelty pet thing that I could show off. That seems kind of cruel to the animal.
Yeah, you'd be surprised though how common it is, and like I said, we in the in the sport or the hobby, whatever you want to call it, we refer to those people as pet keepers, because they do get in sometimes. They get licensed and all that, and then they post pictures all the time of the bird, but you never hear anything about them hunting. You never see, so it does happen, and I agree. I mean, hopefully those people at least are taking care of the bird to the best of their abilities. But that's part of why I like the idea of capturing a wild bird that at some point I'm going to release, versus buying a captive bred bird, which I'm sure at some point I'll most likely end up doing, just because there's species that aren't, can't capture here. They don't exist here. So,
Can you capture a bird from out of state and bring it to Ohio?
you can, as long as you abide by both states' laws as far as importation of domestic wild animals and whatnot. Usually that involves um, getting a certificate of health from a veterinarian and getting an import permit from the DNR. Um, as long as you follow all that stuff, yeah, you can do that. We actually had a guy this trapping season. He came from Maryland, um, and went trapping with us, and we helped trap him a bird. Then he drove back to Maryland.
Uh, you mentioned at some point letting your bird go. When do you anticipate maybe your bird being let loose? And what are some of the things you'd look for? Be like, okay, she's done hunting. It's time to move on.
There's a number of factors in that. One being her performance. You know, not every bird's going to be a good hunter. And rocks, there's just some that don't. So, if after a season or 2 seasons she just is not a good hunter, which that's not going to be the case with her. She's already doing really great. But that would be one reason, because there's not much point as a hunting sport to have a bird that doesn't hunt. Well.
I can understand that because I've got a chocolate lab up there that I think is hopeless. I think she's just a dumb house dog at this point.
Yeah, I mean, at least with the house dog, you're stuck with them in a way or whatever. But with the bird, it's like, okay, well, I can let you go back to the wild and you can do your thing, and hopefully you hunt better on your own than you do with me. But no, I mean, other than that, I'm not really sure personally. I guess because I'm one of those people, I could end up really attached to her and like have her for a really long time before I would think about letting her go. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how it goes after this season. Some guys they'll trap a new bird every year.
That just seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, they just they really, those people really enjoy the trapping and the training. They just enjoy the whole process compared to just the specific, just hunting itself.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely those people, they'll trap a new one every year. Some people hold on to them for at least a couple years, just so they can experience the changes in the bird's behavior and hunting tactics as it matures and learns after a couple seasons, and then they'll let it go because it's at a breeding age. So we'll see how long I end up holding on to her.
Do you know anything about how well the birds do after they've been let loose as far as their mortality rates?
As far as we know, they do pretty well. There's not, nobody's done like a huge big study on it with trackers and
Sure.
and this and that. But just with raptor biology and Nona, if you release a bird that has been hunting pretty good with you, chances are they have a pretty big leg up on things. For example, my bird, I caught her, in a Panera Bread parking lot in Columbus. She didn't know how to hunt anything but mice.
Uh-huh.
So at first, for the longest time, she wouldn't perch very high on a tree, and she would always be looking down and looking at me, and I'd have squirrels like running in the same tree as her 10 feet away, and she's just like, yeah, whatever, So I had to do a special training technique to teach her how to go after squirrels in the trees, and now she knows how to do that. So in a way, we can actually train them and get them better at hunting a variety of things than they may learn on their own if they were trying to do it on their own.
Wow. Earlier you mentioned the different levels of of kind of like the apprenticeship and the master and all that stuff. What level are you in right now? Are you still an apprentice?
I'm an apprentice. Yep. Yep.
So what birds are available to you? What can you track?
Right now, I can have a red-tailed hawk or an American kestrel.
Okay. I thought I seen something about an owl.
Yes, that is the wife's owl. They are not a falconry bird.
So they're not in the raptor class.
No, I mean they're a bird of prey. They don't make good falconers. There are some falconers that have. There are some that have had success in hunting their owls, especially the diurnal owls that will hunt during the daytime. But for the most part, because of their differences to your hawks and falcons and whatnot, they don't train as well. They're not as suitable for a hunting partner. So he actually is kind of a rescue situation. He came from a small zoo type place, private zoo type place, and he has a broken wing. Rumor is his wing was broke on purpose so he would sit on a perch longer for people to take photographs with.
Uh-huh.
But that's just rumor and what have you. But so we took him in and just trying to undo some of the damage that's been done. He wasn't very fond and trusting of people. So we're working on that and just trying to give him a good place to live out the rest of his days.
Does he hang out with the hawk?
No, that would be a bad idea.
Would they get at each other?
Oh, yeah, and typically if they were in a wild setting, the owl, he's a Eurasian eagle owl, a very large species of owl, but they will actually take hawks and stuff at nighttime. They will kill them.
Oh wow!
So
okay, guess it's a good thing I don't have birds of prey then.
Yeah, owls, especially the bigger owls, they're pretty formidable. Messing with my hawk is like dealing with a parakeet compared to working with that owl.
Is the owl something your wife wanted to get, or did you go, hey, check this out, look what we could have?
She's always liked the owls. Our house is halfway decorated in owls, and I had a buddy let me know about this one in the situation, and it was just kind of those in the moment. It was like, well, can at least do a good thing and try to give this bird a better life, because where the bird was being sold at, if I wouldn't have got him, chances are whoever got him would not have been experienced at all with any type of birds of prey and how to properly care for them. So I tried to get in there and get a hold of him before somebody that would have got in over their head.
How did you approach your wife with, hey, here's a crazy idea, I want to trap a falcon? Are you okay with that?
I've had some time to soften her up on that one, because I originally took interest in falconry like 8 years ago, and when I looked into it and did my research and stuff and contacted people at that time, I realized that one, I didn't have really the proper space for it, and two, I knew at that time I wouldn't have enough time to dedicate to the bird for it to be fair for the bird. So I put it on the back burner until, it was in a point in life where I knew it was something I could do and it wouldn't take away from the bird at all, that I would have plenty of time to devote to it and do it right. And so by that time she was, she already knows something I'd want to do for years and years, and so she's always been real supportive of hobbies and whatnot.
Yeah, I could have had 18 years, and if I looked at my wife and said, "Hey, I want to get a falcon," she'd say, "No, that's stupid."
Well, over the years, I've had alligators, I've had all kinds of venomous snakes. Um, so the getting a hawk was pretty pretty normal, I would guess, compared to some of the animals I've cared for.
Yeah, you're a wild man. I forgot about that. You do you still have snakes and stuff?
Yeah, I'm one of well now there's four of us. I'm one of four people that are licensed in the state to privately keep venomous snakes. When I originally got my license, I was only the second person in the state.
Wow. So what do you? Is it just a hobby for you to keep them, or do you breed them, or get the
Um,
anti venom and stuff like that out of them, or venom out?
no, doing the anti-venom is there's already medical facilities that are established in that,
Uh huh.
so it's one of those things that's very hard um, to get into, even if you wanted to. For me, it was more. I did a little bit of breeding, um, but it was just more of a fascination and a hobby that. Um, I mean, I had my first pet snakes and stuff when I was in like middle school, I think. Um, so it just it's been a lifelong thing that just kind of grew and grew over the years.
Oh boy. So for your falconry community, your group, do you guys go out and do exhibitions or anything for people just to kind of show them what falcons are capable of?
Yeah, we so we have the state association, and we usually have a couple events a year. So we'll have one that we call the apprentice seminar, and it's specifically for uh, people that maybe are considering being an apprentice or just wanting information. And so they can come in and we just kind of sit and explain the whole process, show them all the equipment and all that stuff. And then we also have a couple other events throughout the year, which are hunting events, and the public is welcome. They can come and we kind of pair them up with the falconers, and we take them out on hunts. They get to help beat the brush and uh, try to flush game for the birds and see the birds in action, see what it's all about.
Is there a website that people could go to check that out?
Yeah, it's the Ohio Falconry Association. Um, Let me pull up
If they just
their
Google
actual.
if they just Google Ohio Falconry Association, it'll probably pop
Yeah,
up.
you can Google that, and the website itself is ohiofalconry.org.
And then you've also, I know last time I talked to you, you started a YouTube channel kind of going into the falconry stuff. Have you done any more with it?
Not too much. I think the last thing I posted up on there was a trapping video. Took some clips of one of our trapping sessions. Um, I'm meaning to get back on it. I've just been super focused with trying to get my bird um, going really well and doing well. Um, so I've kind of just haven't dealt with the hassle of taking my GoPro and everything else right yet. But I'll have some new videos coming up on there soon.
Is there somebody on YouTube that maybe is like a guru of falconry that if someone wanted to check some stuff out, they could?
There's a few good people. One I really like. His YouTube channel is it's Ben Woodruff. He is a super knowledgeable falconer, and he's got videos that cover a wide variety of topics. So he's a pretty good one for learning various things. Uh, there's not a lot of really. It's kind of part of why I started my channel. My first video was I think my first video was a how to become a falconer video, because I wanted to put something out there that just dealt with that, gave somebody the blueprint to head in that direction if that's what they wanted to do. But there's a couple.
Sure, because I mean the beginning part of it, just getting all the registrations and the permits and stuff, I would have had no idea where to start with that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that not only, because a lot of people they'll go to the DNR website or what have you, and they'll see, okay, well, I got to get a sponsor and this and that. And one of the worst things somebody can do is find a falconer and run up to him and be like, hey, will you sponsor me? It's because that person, I mean, it's a big commitment to take somebody on for 2 years, and have to be involved with them that much, especially for it to just be, some random stranger coming up and saying, hey, will you sponsor me? I want to be a falconer. So, we try to tell people, don't come right out the gate with that. Just ask to go on a hunt, ask if you can go beat some brush on a hunt, and then pick their brain and go with some other falconers and do it a few times, get to know that person and see if it would be a good fit before you approach them about being your sponsor.
I don't know that I have any more questions at the moment. The falconry world is very interesting to me. I didn't know anything about it until I seen a video of you, talking about it and showing off your birds a little bit. If I have more questions later, would you mind if we do another podcast?
No, not at all. I'd enjoy doing another one, and it's one of those things that you start digging into it, and you just end up with more and more questions. So I'm available anytime.
Yeah, I've found myself getting into rabbit holes here recently. I just got into a big one with Bigfoot, so I got to dig myself out of that one before I get into falconry anymore.
I hear you.
Hey, Brian, I'll let you go. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yep, see ya. I'm not sure if I'll be able to convince Leah to let me have one, but I've got a falcon that flies around my backyard all the time, and I may have to try to catch it. I don't know. We'll see. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation between me and Brian. If you'd like to follow us on Facebook, go over to 12 Hike. Our Instagram page is 12 Hike Challenge. We've got a YouTube channel where I upload additional video interviews if you want to go check that out. And be sure to visit our web store where you can get a hat, sweatshirt, t-shirt, sticker. I think Brad even made dog tags here recently.